Taiwan's CHIPS Act is one step closer to completion as global efforts to attract chip companies intensify. China continues to operate warplanes around Taiwan, with drones playing a bigger role. The presidents of the United States and the Philippines meet at the White House to strengthen ties. Plus,
an NGO is handing over trust and responsibility to the homeless as a way to help them get back on their feet and connect with the society.
A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Betty Chen. Taiwan has set a threshold for semiconductor companies hoping to access big tax breaks. It's the latest stage in a rolling out of Taiwan's CHIPS Act, legislation aimed at bolstering Taiwan's position at the forefront of the global chip industry. James Chater reports.
Over the next month, Taiwan will collect public opinions on its version of a CHIPS Act. It's the latest step in enacting legislation that Taiwan hopes will secure the country's position at the forefront of semiconductor production, the brains of modern electronics.
我们的经济部的想法是让台湾的这个研发再增加，然后领先的地位在国际上保持领先。
Taiwan's CHIPS Act will provide companies in research and development tax credits of up to 25% for investment and innovation, and 5% for investment in advanced chip-making equipment. To qualify, companies will need to spend more than 6 billion Taiwan dollars on research and development, around 195 million US dollars, and that spending must account for more than 6% of the company's annual sales. Taiwan produces 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors. But tensions with China, which claims Taiwan as part of its territory, have stoked concerns about over-reliance on Taiwanese chips. In response, several countries have unveiled multi-billion-dollar packages to attract chip companies to set up shop and protect their supply of the critical technology. Apart from setting aside more than 50 billion US dollars for chip development, the US CHIPS Act also provides a 25% tax break for investment in chip manufacturing equipment. Japan has approved 770 billion yen for domestic chip investment, with grants of up to 50% of capital expenditure. South Korea has promised 410 billion US dollars for its chip industry, with tax breaks of 15% for investment in chip-making facilities. Taiwanese chip giant TSMC is expected to benefit from Taiwan's CHIPS Act. The main chip supplier to Apple is already building factories elsewhere, with a 40 billion US dollar facility under construction in the US. But TSMC has recently expressed frustration with the terms of its US investment.
We are in close and constant communication with the US government so that we fully understand all the details and provide our feedback and comments to them.
Taiwan's CHIPS Act is scheduled to come into force next year. Now, businesses have the opportunity to say whether the benefits on offer are enough to keep them in Taiwan. Damon Lin and James Chater for TaiwanPlus.
To find out more about Taiwan's CHIPS Act, our reporter James Chater spoke with Jason Hsu, a senior fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School. Hsu is also a former legislator for Taiwan's opposition Kuomintang, or KMT.
How does Taiwan's CHIPS Act compare with other countries that have introduced similar types of legislation?
So the difference between Taiwan's CHIPS Act compared with other countries is that Taiwan's legislation, or whether it's an amendment to the original law, is increase of the tax breaks, or given a larger margin or bracket of the tax deduction, which is different from other countries' version, such as Japan, US, Korea, and EU. For example, in the US, the CHIPS and Science Act actually come with $52 billion in funding and grants, and it's the actual money that company apply and will be able to get.
Will Taiwan's CHIPS Act be able to counteract concerns about the geopolitical risk of so much chip manufacturing being centered in Taiwan?
My view is that it will not create too much incentives for the chip makers for the following reasons. The reason why companies such as TSMC is moving part of its production overseas is not because of the tax breaks, but it's because of the geopolitical pressure, and also it's to be closer to its customers. So I doubt this type of legislation will create too much impact to keep the companies from moving elsewhere. It's a good gesture, but I think it won't be too effective.
What is there that you think that Taiwan can do to counteract that trend of greater concern about geopolitical risk?
Taiwanese government, first and foremost, need to communicate with the U.S. Commerce Department to tone down the remarks on Taiwan being a dangerous place, and also moving TSMC is the geopolitical risk concern. So right now, government must communicate tirelessly with the U.S. counterparts that we will ensure that you get the chips you need, but we also need to keep the most advanced chips in Taiwan.
That was James Chater speaking with Jason Xu from the Harvard Kennedy School. Taiwan's military reported 14 Chinese warplanes operating around the country on Tuesday. Among them was an unmanned aircraft. As our reporter Jaime Okan explains, it's part of a push by China to test Taiwan's defenses with drones.
A team of Taiwanese soldiers monitors the skies above the country. They are on the lookout for Chinese warplanes flying near Taiwan. But recently, China has been sending a growing number of drones into the country's Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ.
Well, in a conflict, I mean, drones will play a major role. And I think what we've seen the PLA try and practice is attempting to see how many different roles their drones are suited for.
The ADIZ is not Taiwan's airspace. It's an area used by the military for defensive purposes. Taiwan tracked the first Chinese drone in the ADIZ last September. Since then, roughly 10% of all reported aircraft have been drones. The most common drone is this one, the BZK-005. It's mostly used to help troops on the ground with reconnaissance.
So their job is going to be to fly out, identify targets, paint them with laser, or just identify their location so that other aircraft or ground units can strike them with long-range munitions.
Militaries around the world have been investing significantly in drones. They were inspired by Ukraine's success in using drones to push back the invading Russian forces. While much of the world uses military-grade drones, civilian drones like these are also being used in conflicts. And while they don't have any high-tech weaponry, in war, intelligence might just be as important as firepower. One of the first reported drone incursions from China was caught on camera. A Chinese civilian drone flew close to a Taiwanese military base, and two soldiers tried to take out the aircraft by throwing rocks at it. This highlighted the unique danger posed by even small drones.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd say that right there kind of shows the dilemma. It's like, kind of, what do you do about it? Do you want to expend very expensive, surface-to-air missiles or something like that? Do you want to send fighter jets after it? That gets very expensive very quickly.
China's military has grown exponentially over the past 2 decades. Its air force is now 4 times the size of Taiwan's. One way Taiwan is enhancing its defense is by developing more anti-drone weapons like this radar jamming gun. Taiwan also plans to install 45 remote-controlled anti-drone systems, which would be able to operate without a full team of soldiers.
In terms of what I think Taiwan should do, I think it's the same thing a lot of militaries are going to need to do is they're going to, specifically against kind of smaller, cheaper unmanned systems, they are going to need to develop defenses that are kind of specifically against that.
As China continues to fly aircraft in the region, Taiwan is looking to bolster its air defense on all fronts, aiming to protect the country against both manned and unmanned threats in the sky. Howard Zhang and Jaime Okan for TaiwanPlus.
Representatives of 25 U.S. defense contractors are in Taiwan for a defense industry forum. Arriving over the weekend, the group's first stop on Monday was an aerospace company in central Taiwan that manufactures rockets. The delegates are due to attend the U.S.-Taiwan Defense Industry Forum with local officials on Wednesday. They will also visit Taiwan's Defense Ministry and the country's leading weapons research institute. A major focus of the group's visit is working with Taiwan on drone technology. One of the visiting companies is the maker of a so-called suicide drone that Ukraine has used to good effect in its war with Russia. Taiwan is developing its own version of the weapon. The leaders of both the United States and the Philippines met in the White House to strengthen military cooperation. The Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. seeks to renew bilateral ties with the U.S. after his predecessor Rodrigo Duterte soured their relationship. Bing Wang reports.
A handshake to reaffirm an old friendship. U.S. President Joe Biden welcomed his Philippines counterpart Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to the White House at the start of Marcos's 4-day working visit to the States. Their main agenda, to strengthen bilateral military cooperation amid China's increasing aggression in Asia.
The United States also remains ironclad in our commitment to the defense of the Philippines, including the South China Sea, and we're going to continue to support the Philippines' military modernization goals.
The meeting comes after the two countries completed their largest joint drills ever, which included live-fire drills at sea. They also held the first fighter jet training exercises in the Philippines since 1990. Marcos as well agreed to give the United States access to 4 more bases in his country, 2 of which face north towards Taiwan, which is just 150 kilometers from the Philippines' northernmost island.
There are also the geopolitical issues that have made the region where the Philippines is possibly, arguably, the most complicated geopolitical situation in the world right now.
Tensions between the Philippines and the United States soured under Marcos's predecessor Rodrigo Duterte, who sought closer ties with China. Now the new Philippine president is working to undo the damage. But Manila still needs to keep Beijing on side. China is the Philippines' largest trading partner. 2 weeks before Marcos's trip to the U.S., the Philippines and China pledged to work together to resolve their maritime disputes in the South China Sea. The Chinese Coast Guard have repeatedly harassed Philippine vessels in contested waters.
中方愿同北方一道，把两国元首的共识做到实处，把稳中非大方向，维护和关系的大局。
The Philippines walks a tightrope balancing ties with the U.S. and China as the major powers vie for influence in the Asia-Pacific region. Washington sees the Philippines as a key strategic military zone in case of an attack by Beijing against Taiwan, which China's ruling Communist Party sees as part of its own territory. With relations at an all-time low between neighboring China and Taiwan, Philippine officials hope that bolstering ties with their old ally will help protect them should tensions escalate. Kama Xu and Bing Wang for TaiwanPlus.
Paraguay's President-elect Santiago Peña says his country will continue to develop its relationship with Taiwan. Peña retweeted a message from Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen after winning the election last weekend. He added, quote, "We will continue to strengthen our historic ties of fraternity and cooperation." Paraguay is Taiwan's only diplomatic ally in South America. Those ties were at stake in Sunday's vote. Peña's main rival had promised to switch diplomatic recognition to Beijing if elected. Foreign businesses in China are concerned about the country's increasing use of exit bans, according to Reuters news agency. China has strengthened its law on spying, making it harder for both foreigners and locals to leave the country. The law now allows exit bans to be imposed on anyone who is under investigation or who is accused of harming China's national security. Between 2016 and 2022, there was an 8-fold increase in cases of exit bans. It's estimated that tens of thousands of people are now prevented from leaving the country at any time. Foreign businesses are especially concerned about this change after a Singaporean executive was blocked from leaving China earlier this year. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has honored a Taiwanese soldier who was killed while fighting for the Ukrainian army. Zelenskyy awarded Tseng Sheng-kuang Ukraine's Order of Courage for his selfless performance in defending the country's sovereignty. Tseng, who was from Taiwan's indigenous Amish group, died in battle in Ukraine last November. He was the first volunteer from East Asia to be killed in action during the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Tseng had previously served in Taiwan's army from 2017 to 2021. Coming up, Tainan is trying to revitalize some of its historic sites with the help of technology. Details after the break.
For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the TaiwanPlus app. You guys heard of TaiwanPlus, right?
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. The southern city of Tainan is trying to bring more visitors to one of its historic sites, but preservation laws mean there's only so much it can do. As John Van Tres reports, officials are putting their hopes in tech to expand the site's appeal.
It's a nationally listed historic site, a spot with 100 years of history that changed the way people lived. But while it's open to the public, there's no line to get in. This is the old waterworks in the southern city of Tainan. Built in 1912, it's more than just a piece of disused infrastructure. It's an important part of Taiwan's story. The site represents the island's 50 years under Japanese colonial rule and its journey into the modern age. There are stories to be told here, and Tainan's government hopes more people will come to hear them. And to do this job, it's turning to augmented reality. Local officials have installed 25 QR codes for visitors to scan, so they can see how the site looked in its prime and how the machinery worked. The site's caretakers are hopeful these codes will bring in more sightseers.
有名的烟囱基座呢，我们也是透过那个文资处他们的资料考究，来还原出原本12层楼高的烟囱的样子。透过这一次的 AR， 我们也可以看到快滤桶它原本是怎么运作的，自在的透过有趣的小互动或者是简单的介绍来理解水稻博物馆究竟在做些什么。
So far, the reaction from visitors has been positive.
感觉很棒啊，就是可以看到以前看不到的一些建筑物的样貌，然后可以多了解一些这些建筑物的一些功能啊或设施。
The hope is to engage the public, so this piece of Taiwan's heritage can get a wider appreciation. Devin Tsai and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
To find out how virtual reality can help boost tourism, John Van Trieste spoke to Taiwan-based tourism consultant Michael McCreish.
So lately there's been a trend of local governments putting in augmented reality or virtual reality at these historical sites to try and bring in more people. Do you think that that's a viable solution?
I think it's one component of a variety of different tactics that governments need to use to increase and improve engagement at these sites and then improve, obviously, visitation to them. So age is an issue. So, that 20 to 40-year-old is a little bit more digital native, and they have the ability to kind of just intuitively work through some of those problems. Those of an older generation don't have that same kind of insight, and so it can be a little bit challenging for some older demographics.
And you've just said that it's only a component, this VR, of revitalizing these spaces. What are the other components that you can see making a big difference?
I would say some of the other components are bringing in local community members to be able to tell stories, participatory like workshops. So maybe the visitors or the domestic, members of the region or the town or the country can come in and kind of participate in some of the, more hands-on experiences relating to that historic site.
And what about making different use of historic sites? For instance, using the spaces to put on exhibits related to the site so that people have an opportunity to really get an idea of what they're looking at.
Absolutely. I mean, that's to that same point about maybe there's an opportunity to create a structure around local artists who want to provide their own interpretation of this site. So it might be a variety of different mediums that artists can come in and it's like a studio space where people can see these artists working on projects that reflect some sort of or have some sort of association to the cultural significance of these places.
That was John Van Trier speaking to tourism consultant Michael McCreish. Taiwan is home to about 3,000 unhoused people. That's what official statistics say. One Taipei-based NGO is hoping to reduce that number by providing job opportunities, workplace training, and a renewed sense of purpose. And it all began with the night market stall. Our reporter Sandy Chi has the story.
In the middle of the hustle and bustle in Zaohe Night Market in Taipei is a distinctive beverage stand, which was set up with the goal to help the underprivileged in the city. It was once run by several homeless, all under the guidance of Papa Wu.
74-year-old Papa Wu does not have it easy. He's a single father with a 19-year-old son who has a mental illness. He was never homeless himself, but he's spent much of his life with people who are.
会走入无家者啊，很多都是自我放弃的，自我放弃以后，他们就会，比较不愿意跟人家交往。那我们要尽量就是跟他相处，跟他能够融合。
Wu is working with a local NGO called Wanderer's Table. Wanderer is how people in Taiwan refer to the unhoused. Here's how the stall works. The NGO employs Wu, and he in turn employs people in need. The project's founder, Yu Sixian, says the job provides a unique opportunity for interaction.
那我们平常我们会去买咸酥鸡啊等等，这个我们经验都有，无家者也有，所以呢，他们知道怎么互动。而在这个互动的当下，双方是平等的。
Originally, Wu ran 3 food stands with up to 8 part-time workers. But 2 of the stands were forced to close down during the pandemic. And while they no longer employ unhoused people at the stand, the NGO has come up with another way to help. They set up the Fuxi Living Room in 2021.
我们这边就是除了发餐和就是一些各种的生活物资之外，然后我们有一个空间，然后这个空间就是还蛮漂亮的，像一个咖啡厅一样，就是街友们他们可以来到这个地方，然后就来这个地方聊聊天，然后讲讲话。然后另外，因为我们有这个空间，所以也有像是义检啊、义诊啊，或是法律咨询的服务也会在这个地方进行。下午的时段，我们会开设一些生活能力的课程，像是比如说使用手机，然后使用 Google Map 或是 Line， 然后或是伤口护理啊，或是一些可以抒发心情、一些涂写写、画画的一些活动这样子。
According to the latest government statistics, Taiwan has around 3,000 unhoused people registered, with the majority of them still living on the streets. In 2022 alone, Fuxi Living Room gave over 16,000 meals to unhoused people. Out of these individuals, around 1,000 have spent time resting up at the NGO, and 170 managed to get hold of daily necessities.
其实他们大部分是进到这里来的时候状况都不会太好，有一些是酗酒问题严重，有一些是情绪管理严重，然后有一些是时间控管很差。但是他们到现在其实都可以看到他们很明显的进步，是他们可以好好的来上班。光是好好的来上班这件事情对无家者来说其实是很困难的，因为他们在过去承担了很多社会上面的拒绝。
因为我目前来到这边，就是我还蛮感谢，因为里面有一个社工，他教会我怎么去存钱，因为我是一个完全不懂得存钱的人，就是我赚多少就是花多少。
他会鼓励你，就问你有没有想要意愿去工作，我觉得这个不错啦。让一些就是说，如果因为我们这边团体里面有些是也有年纪长的，也有那些像我这种年纪还有工作能力的，可能因为受伤或怎样， 可以来做一些短期的工作。
Organizers say the Fuxi Living Room does more than just offer job opportunities. They're also fighting against the stereotypes that unhoused people are lazy or don't know how to work.
他们从可能国小毕业之后就已经开始去做了很多不同的打工，然后所以在小客厅这个地方，我们培力的除了有一些基础的工作的要求之外，其实更多的是在这个地方可以培养他们的信心。
And sometimes that confidence can come from something as simple as having a place to go, a living room to sit in, and just a little friendly interaction. Ricky and Sandy Chi for TaiwanPlus.
Legislators are calling on Taiwan's Food and Drug Administration to fine U.S. wholesale company Costco. Costco Taiwan issued a recall on their frozen berries last month after an imported batch tested positive for hepatitis A. Kuomintang lawmaker Wang Hongwei says U.S. authorities knew about a berry contamination before then and had notified their Taiwanese counterparts as early as March. She says that the products never should have made it onto store shelves. Taiwan authorities are still investigating the matter, but they intend to fine Costco. The company faces a fine up to $6.5 million. The company has apologized for the incident and is offering help to anyone affected. Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Remember to download the TaiwanPlus app for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, today we leave you with images of Donkey Day in rural Mexico. The event celebrates the hard work that donkeys do. I'm Betty Chen. Take care and see you next time.